Hey, BookTube, Chelsea the Reading Outlaw here to do another set of 5 reviews in my 2017 book review thing that we're doing here. This is books 56 through 60. Book number 56 that I read, I actually listened to on audio, and that is Bloodlines by Claudia Gray. I love this book. This is me kind of like dipping my toes into the water of the Star Wars novels, and I loved it. This is a book all about kind of early Senator Organa. It takes place right after the Return of the Jedi, right after the 3rd movie or 6th movie, whatever. You guys know what I mean. So we have, the the rebellion has been wrapped up. They've established a new Senate, and we have Leia Organa kind of transitioning herself from rebel leader into senator, but then back out of that again, and how all of that happens. It's such a wonderful, wonderful book. Claudia Gray gives us this Leia who is everything it feels like Leia is in the movies and so much more. It really feels like Leia in this book. Claudia manages to capture the spirit of the character of Leia, but also a lot of the person that it seems like Carrie Fisher probably was for some reason. I don't know if it's just because I read Carrie Fisher's memoir again not too long ago or what, but it just felt like there was a lot of the real person in there as well. I don't know. So I just really, really adored this book and this powerful female that we're given who is making a lot of tough choices and wrestling with a lot of tough questions and trying to have hope and to hang on to this thing that they fought so hard for. This book really hit close to home for me in a lot of ways, and a lot of kind of apologism and nationalism and nativism that kind of pops up through this book that is ringing a lot of bells in 2017 in a really scary way. So this book really eerily affected me a lot in that way, but this book is also so full of hope that I felt that come through really powerfully. So I really, really recommend that you pick this one up. If you're new to the Star Wars novels like I am, it seems like a great place to start. I wasn't lost. I wasn't confused. If it's been a while since you've seen the Star Wars movies and you want to refresh, it may not be a horrible idea, just so you know, but you don't need to do that in any way, shape, or form. I understood everything that happened in this book perfectly, and I really recommend that you pick it up. The next book that I read was The World in Flames, A Black Boyhood in a White Supremacist Cult by Gerald Walker. You all know how obsessed I am with cults and with anything having to do with cult memoirs. This one is really interesting because I would say a vast 99% of cult memoirs are by white people, usually by white women. A lot of Scientology and FLDS and Jonestown memoirs that are written or we have survivors of those incidences are usually female and are usually white. So to get a memoir of being in a cult from a man and from a black man more specifically was really fascinating. This book delves a little bit into race, but not as strongly as I thought it would, kind of from the title. But basically Gerald Walker spent his youth in a cult, a doomsday cult, constantly preparing for the end of the world. Like most doomsday cults, it actually was just a really kind of elaborate scheme to milk people of their money. A cult, like most cults do. Gerald talks about that in the book in the later chapters as he kind of grows up and grows out of this cult. But as part of this as part of this doomsday cult, there's very much so this underlying idea of white supremacy and the superiority of the white race and keeping races from mixing. Gerald's black family is told that they are extra special because they are extra select because so few black people are worthy of being in this church, that the fact that their church is allowing them to be there means that they're that much more selected by God, basically. And that's pretty fucked up. There's lots of super fucked up stuff in this book, but it's a really interesting look at what it's like inside a doomsday cult, which is a very specific kind of cult, different from, say, a Scientology or an FLDS kind of thing. But it's really, really interesting. It reads really, really quickly. It's very, very, Gerald Walker's a great storyteller, so it flies really, really quickly. And it's just a really interesting perspective on the field, if that is kind of an area of reading that you enjoy like I do. The next book I read is The Devil in the White City, Madness, Magic, and Murder at the Fair That Changed America by Eric Larson. This is the story of the Chicago World's Fair and also of serial killer H.H. Holmes and his murder house. I picked it up because of H.H. Holmes and the murder house, because I'm fascinated by serial killers, and H.H. Holmes is one of the earliest American serial killers. He's been called the American Jack the Ripper. The murder house in Chicago is fucking fascinating. He had like rooms and rooms and rooms of different horrific ways to kill people and torture people. I have some really macabre interests, you guys. It's kind of fucked up, but they did an episode about it on My Favorite Murder, and also on Last Podcast on the Left, both of which I actually just listened to. Oh, and on Time Suck with Dan Stevens. So lots of stuff happening around H.H. Holmes in my life. So I've decided to finally pick this book up. It's kind of one of like the books on him, but it also talks a lot about the Chicago World's Fair, which I actually didn't know anything about, despite the fact that I've been to Chicago dozens of times. My sister lives in Chicago with my niece. We go there for family vacations. I really didn't know anything about the World's Fair, so it was really interesting to learn about and think about what it would have been like to be in the city of Chicago when the first ever Ferris wheel is being created, and when animals and cultural families are being brought in from different countries. There's part of it that it's very racist and very xenophobic and very bigoted in a way that is definitely a product of the times, but it's also a really fascinating look at culture and entertainment and media in the 1800s in Chicago. So I just really thought it was really interesting. Eric Larson writes wonderful nonfiction. He's absolutely brilliant at telling stories. This is another one I listened to on audio. I highly recommend that you guys give it a listen if you have any interest in serial killers, and then also you can learn some fun stuff about the World's Fair. That's how I experienced it. The next book that I read was one that I was like constantly refreshing my library holds list on, waiting for it to come. And that is Everybody Yoga by Jessamyn Stanley. This is a book that is literally all about everybody's capability to do yoga. I love doing yoga. It is one of my fitness methods of choice because it's not just fitness. There's also a really great meditative component and spiritual component that helps me manage a lot of my depression and anxiety. In addition to the medication that I take. I don't want to give you guys the opinion that it's all managed through yoga and meditation, but that definitely helps me as a self-care and coping mechanism. This book is really great because it talks about the asana practice or the physical practice that we all know when we think of yoga, the moving the body through the different postures. But this book also talks about the different spiritual beliefs and the emotional and mental practices that back up yoga as a tradition. I love it. This book talks a lot about how westernized yoga has come to portray a certain body type as the ideal or preferred body type for doing yoga. That body is usually thin, it's usually white, it's usually blonde, it's usually upper middle class. And how that's not what yoga has to be, that anybody can do yoga. And yoga isn't necessarily about doing all these crazy things with your body, but it's about trying to find the connection between your body and your mind. And I'm not going to read the book to you. I'm going to tell you guys to go read it yourself because it's so fantastic. But I can't convey to you guys how powerful it is to see pictures of people with non-thin, non-white, non-female, non-able-bodied bodies doing yoga. I cannot express to you guys the emotional impact that just those visuals alone will have, separated from the brilliant writing and essays that this book has. Go pick it up. If you don't do yoga, it'll make you want to start. If you do yoga, it'll reignite your passion for your practice. Go follow Jessamyn all over Instagram. She'll be in your feeds. It's a constant inspiration and I really loved it. The last book I read is a fine book. It's 1, 2, 3 Magic by Thomas W. Pellin. I'm not entirely sure. This is one of those super fun books that you get to read sometimes when you're a parent. It is all about the 1, 2, 3 magic discipline structure that basically has to do with, disciplining your kid via counting and stoicism. It's something we're going to try. Will is 2, so he's getting into the terrible 2s. So it's, we are always looking for ways to try and find a discipline method and system that works for our family. We're not hitters. We're not spankers. We're trying not to be yellers. So we're just trying to find a way that works. And so I picked up this book to read, and I think we're going to give it a try and see how well it functions. Let me know down below if you're also a parent and have read this one or picked this one up, and if you've had success with it and what you think. It sounds like it should be fairly easy and fairly successful, but that's how all these books make that sound. So I will report back later once we have some results. But yeah, that was the 60th book and the last book for this wrap up. As always, let me know down below what you guys think of these books. If you've read them, if you're going to read them, comment, subscribe, come back and see me. Find me all over social media so we can talk books all the time. And until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have happy reading.